We're unboxing something a little different today, and it is that stark, bright red compared to my blue studio. This is the Obsbot Tail Air. This is supposed to be a webcam, but it is so much more. One, it is the biggest webcam that I have ever seen, and it's supposed to be able to replace this Sony camera. I'm a little skeptical, but I'm also quite hopeful. So the question is, can this replace my camera, or at the very least, can I find some use for it? There's only one way to find out. Let the unboxing begin. Oh, and by the way, Obsbot did send this to me for review, but everything I say in this video are my thoughts only. Okay, let's open the box. Ooh, Mastermind on Air. That is some premium packaging. And that is a premium looking carrying case. Now, because it's got a carrying case, does that mean it's meant to be carried? Okay, with this case, it weighs 542.1 grams. That's pretty heavy. That's the weight of a crop sensor camera like this one with a light lens. Let's see what's in the case. Ha! What about this? Of course, it's the manual. Should actually go through this first. What else is inside? So this here appears to be a Type-C coupler. You could connect this to the Obsbot's Type-C port, and there appears to be a charging port and a data transfer port. What else do we have here? And of course, we've got a Type-C to Type-C cable. We also have a Type-C to Type-A dongle. You could use that for this. And the camera itself. I just called it a camera because that's also what it is. It is swiveling on its own. Does it lock somewhere? Huh. Kinda rotates back into place. Let's peel this. That is a large 23mm f1.8 lens. That actually looks like glass, could be plastic, but it seems to be glass. Obsbot also sent this Type-C to Ethernet connector. Let's open this. User guide. And there is your Type-C to Ethernet adapter. Ethernet isn't only used as a more stable connection over Wi-Fi, but it's also used to send more stable video connection over streams. So you've got a lot of professional broadcast applications for this. To be honest, I unboxed this in a hurry because I have a meeting tomorrow and I want to use it. But I will see you in a couple of days after I've spent more time with this. Okay, I got way too excited opening this that I forgot to show you the ports. By the way, I turned it on and now it's tracking me via Wi-Fi. I am on the app right now and this is super real time. It's only laggy here in the studio where it's far from my Wi-Fi. Okay, back to the ports. Here we got a mic jack, which we audio lovers love. I'm already imagining all the mics that I'm gonna plug into this. You got your Type-C port, micro HDMI out in case you wanna send the video out to your computer, and you got a micro SD card. And that is what makes this different from webcams like this cheap Rapu one that I was using prior to this. Look at the difference in lens size. This thing, like most webcams, only work as an attachment to your computer so you can select it over Zoom calls, but this has a life of its own. I'm kinda getting it a bit more now. So yeah, micro SD so you can store memory into this, not your phone, not your computer. You've got a 1/4" thread for mounting this onto tripods, and you've got a hot shoe connector for various purposes. Obsbot has this 360 dock where you can make the camera spin there too. Okay, now I'll see you in a couple of days. Okay, we're still here because I couldn't help it. The live video monitoring on the app is super responsive. It's crazy. Like every time I used something like this on my Sony cameras, they'd be super glitchy and stuttery, and sooner or later it would get disconnected. But here, because I got my internet running through the Ethernet cable going into the Ethernet adapter, into the Obsbot Tail Air, I could stream a high quality connection on my phone using this setup. Now I'll be back in a couple of days. Okay, I just wanted to do a quick audio test. I have the automatic gain setting turned on right here, and noise reduction is off, and I'm going to shout and scream. And I think that is the most amazing feature to have, because in my experience, I have not clipped with the automatic gain function. I'm going to drag the gain over here to see what that does. If it changes anything, it's not changing anything. I don't think it is. That looks like a pretty hot signal. Yeah, we're going to crank that down a bit. We're going to crank that down a bit. Sounds pretty amazing. I'm going to crank up the gain on the Hollyland Lark M2 itself. And now this is set to maximum gain, and this is how that sounds. And I'm going to drop the gain all the way to the lowest setting with automatic gain still on. I'm going to drag it all the way up again, and I'm going to try to see if I am clipping the audio. Let me know if this is clipping. I should probably check first. Now let's try a noise reduction test. I'm going to set my AC to jet mode for a loud fan, and this is how it sounds without noise reduction. I'm going to set the noise reduction to 1. Noise reduction 1, this is how that sounds with the AC set to jet mode. Now with noise reduction set to 2, this is how that sounds. Noise reduction set to 3. This is how that sounds. You know what's amazing here? I can actually monitor my audio. You can hear that feedback. Noise reduction off. But goodness, as an audiophile, I love the automatic gain feature. I think the noise reduction is usable. And think about this. It's applying noise reduction and automatic gain to whatever microphone you attach to it. Okay, we are at our local tennis country club, and as you can see here, you can actually quite use the tail air as a vlogging camera. There's quite a bit of dynamic range here. I am literally a shadow right now, but here I get more light in, so I have turned on HDR mode, and you're listening to me via the Hollyland Lark M2 microphone that I'm wearing right now. It's the perfect mic to be able to play or do something active while still getting to record audio. So yeah, ultimate portability with the Obsbot Tail Air, ultimate portability in terms of audio with the Hollyland Lark M2. I feel awkward vlogging with other people here. Do you see that blur though? That is a respectable amount of background blur. And I do have footage of my wife practicing with her coach. So this is footage of my wife practicing tennis, and the tail air really just locked onto her. It is amazing at that, and it does that very, very fast, capturing all those dynamic movements. I think it does not disappoint in terms of sharpness. If you needed to, you could actually zoom in using the pinch zoom features on the Obsbot Tail Air. You can zoom in as much as 4 times if you had to. And the internal microphone also is able to capture omnidirectional audio, so that kind of helps. I'm going to leave some spots here where we did capture some of the audio from the footage. Alright, welcome to the Obsbot Start App, and let me show you all the cool features. The top left tab, that is just for the connection settings. We do not want to go there right now. This one over here, this is Director's View, which is incredible because as you can see, there are so many Daves. Let me click this one, and the gimbal moves there. I click the wide one, it moves there. Whatever I click, that is what it is going to show, whether you are on a live stream or recording, which is incredible. This is just really great for composition and knowing your shots. So let's go to the settings tab right here. There we go. I am set to manual exposure because I like how I can dial in my ISO right here. I can drag that up. Don't want it to be too bright. I like setting my ISO to 200 to minimize the grain, and I just have a very bright studio light to help me out. My shutter speed is set to 60, and here at the bottom you have autofocus. I'm gonna set that to continuous autofocus because, you know, with a device like this, you do not want single autofocus. I can flip my screen. There we go. Is that bokeh? You can see that bokeh. Yeah, you can flip my screen. You can see this grid over here, which helps you compose your shots. Now, sometimes you can actually, you know, use this HDR button over here. I just clicked HDR. You know, this is useful if you have too many highlights, too many shadows. Let me turn that off to show you what I mean. If I set ISO to 400, you can see that the highlights over here, you don't see the details in my palm anymore. It kind of disappear. But if we turn HDR on, it kind of squeezes the dynamic range to, you know, have a more manageable image. But personally, I don't like to use HDR too much, so let me turn that off. We get a more natural look, and this is how that would look. And by the way, I can double tap my face to remove that human tracking. That was human tracking. And I can just double tap my face again to make sure that the human tracking stays on. I can use gesture controls to make sure it works. Okay, it's supposed to be zooming in right now. I'm not sure it's actually doing that in camera. Let me show you that later. But let us go back to auto exposure. This is if the camera were setting the exposure settings on its own. And if I select auto exposure over here, auto exposure lock, this, you know, manages your image more so it's not flickering with changing brightness every couple of seconds. So, you know, if you don't prefer to use manual exposure, this is the way to do that. But again, I personally like to use manual exposure. I'm gonna set this to 200 with the maximum brightness. It actually isn't set to maximum because if I set it to maximum, you're gonna see that the highlights are gonna be very blown out. So I try to set my studio light to like 80%. Double tapping that. Let's check this over here. Yes, we have video playback and we can watch everything. We can even take photos. So I'm gonna take I can't find the photo button. Later, we will find that hopefully. Let's check the bottom settings, gesture control. See, you can actually turn the gestures off. If you do these intricate dances and if sometimes the gestures are annoying you, you can actually turn them off. So you have dynamic zoom, you have record. Couple of other things here. I'm going to show a lot of these later with the actual footage. What you are seeing right now is a screen cap of my phone. So this is not how it would actually look quality-wise. But going back to the bottom settings, we do have the option to use the built-in mic or to use an external microphone, which I love, by the way. There are more audio settings right here. There is automatic gain, which is very useful. I'm gonna show how that's used later. You have noise reduction. You can slide that up and down. Face autofocus, I just have that on all the time. Face auto exposure, very useful. You got UVC mode, which turns the Obsbot tail air into a webcam that can be detected by your computer. And NDI here is a mind-blowing feature. I've just heard of it from Obsbot. This allows you to wirelessly send both your audio and video at the same time to your computer from the Obsbot. It is so much more than that, but I do think this is where multimedia production is headed. Sadly, you do have to buy a separate $99 license key to use NDI, but you can look into it to see if it's worth it for you. You do have your media settings with your frame rate. I like setting mine to 30 because that is a vlogger look. We can set it to 24 for a more filmic look. I'll go with 30. You got your encoder settings, bitrate. I like to set my resolution to 4K whenever I'm recording, sometimes even when I'm streaming, because this really is the best way to get the sharpest look out of this camera. You have a couple more settings, so you can even use HDMI output, so you can connect this to your computer via a Camlink 4K. Now let's tackle the settings at the bottom. You have your AI button, and right here, you got the wide shot. You have auto, it looks for the best possible shot. And the top right image over here is how it's going to look in the end. Here you can set your gimbal tracking speed. Let me set it to slow. This actually isn't very slow because it's still able to capture you wherever you are. But if you set fast, that is fast. You can set it to standard. I like to set mine to slow because it's fast enough and that gives a very cinematic look. The next one is for composition. This one is face framing, so wherever I look, that is how it's going to change the framing. So imagine I have a friend over here and I say, hey, welcome to the show, and welcome to the show as well. And I can look back at the camera and all of that is automated. I can turn off face framing. And now, as you can see, my face is in the center of these two lines. We can change the x-axis, and that changes where my face is relative to the frame. We can change the y-axis, like so. And so this is human tracking, by the way. I can just double tap me, and that removes it, and I can move around freely and the camera stays in place. But if I double tap myself again, bam, it is tracking me again. But let's say I want to track this microphone over here. I'm gonna double tap myself first, then select the object tracking. I'm going to highlight this microphone, bam. And now wherever I move the microphone, the camera follows. That is incredible. And we do have manual gimbal controls in case you prefer that. The tracking is holding it in place, so I'm gonna double click that, double tap. Oops, doesn't work. There we go. We can move the gimbal, camera, webcam, whatever you call this thing, up and down. And we can control the speed, of course. This is slow, this is fast, right there. And by the way, if this isn't obvious, everything I'm doing right now is in real time. I'm monitoring it on my phone in real time. It's not lagging like the Sony Imaging Edge app. This crop-like button over here is for zooming in and out. Just by pinching my fingers, as you can see, I can control the zoom in and out. But you can also use a pinch slide, which moves the entire frame. Pinch, slide, pinch, slide, pinch, slide. And as for P1, 2, 3, this is for positions that you've saved. Let me tap P1. Bam, we're right back where we started. And from here, I'm gonna go to P2. And I'm going to tap the P2 button. Bam, it tracks me. And as you can see, at the top right, it also zoomed in. So it doesn't only save where the gimbal or camera is pointed at, it also remembers the zoom setting for that position, which I think is handy. I'm gonna move to my P3 and tap P3 right here. Bam. As you can see at the top right, it zooms out. I go back to P2, tap P2, it zooms in, which is incredible. And when I'm done, I'm gonna go back to P1, and we are back where we started. And let's not forget that this is a portable device. I can take it around the room if I wanted to. I can vlog with this if I wanted to, and it works. I can move it over here. And it follows me. Okay, now we are on the Obsbot Center desktop app, and I just wanted to show you a few cool things on this app. We're not gonna go through everything because a lot of the controls are similar, but take a look at this. I am gonna go to the image and yeah, same controls here.
beauty right there. Over here, I can choose this man setting. I can choose, okay, what is native? Okay, this is classic. What is that? Yep, you get beauty filters. You can even customize it, and why would I want to do this? I don't know why, but I am going to make my face very slim. That is 100% slimmer. See how slim my face is? Let's remove that. Oh my goodness, what is happening to my face? Okay, we can make it narrower. Wow, we can clarify my face. Or is this just clarifying the overall contrast? That's actually pretty cool. That might be useful. I might use a bit of that. Smoothening. Okay, I could benefit from a bit. I think you saw I had like maybe 15, 20 smoothening. I don't want to be too smooth, because then the perceived sharpness of the camera would also drop. So I think, 20 just for manners, modern day manners. I think that's fine. We can use background blur. Let's take a look. Ooh, that is very intense. Take a look. There's that kind of a very obvious warping effect. Let's drag it down to 2, see if that changes anything. Better. I still see the warping around me, but yeah, that is better. Set it to 1. Huh. Is there blur? It's on, right? Yeah, it's on, and there's a tiny bit of blur, and it's not as obvious. Is there warping? I don't see any warping. Let's turn the background blur off. Huh. Is it actually? Yeah, I think it is. I'm looking at the top side. Yep, it is applying a pinch of blur. So blur level 1, yeah, there is also a tiny bit of warp. I can see it now. There is a bit of that warping, but this is a bit more usable. Yeah. I think if you use blur level 1, you can get away with it and no one is gonna know. They're gonna think it's natural bokeh. Look at the light on top of my head. I'm going to turn the blur off, and it looks pretty solid, but when I click blur, it kind of glows. You also have filters over here. You have nature, fresh, clear, and you can actually set the levels for that. That's pretty neat. I would actually potentially use this. These are essentially LUTs. Yeah, let's remove the background blur. This is the film filter. That is very filmic, isn't it? I wouldn't use too much, maybe 30%, 40%. Play around with that. We have other features for the face here. We can control the cheekbones. We can control the nose. What is happening to my nose? Huh. Can even whiten our teeth? There we go. I'm gonna drag that all the way up. Goodness gracious. Nasolabial. Ah, the shadows under the nose. And then you have more for the body, and then you have makeup. Yeah, I wouldn't use any of these. Can you see my screen here? This is the live video feed, wireless. And the audio you are also hearing is wireless. This, my friends, is NDI. It sends both the audio and the video in a highly compressed and yet high quality format that causes the audio and video to sync in real time and maintain high quality. You might not believe me. You might be saying, Dave, you're probably using wired audio. Now, as you can see right there, right there on the screen, I'm monitoring myself, can move around the studio, and this audio and video signal is still being sent. My audio source right now is the Hollyland Lark Mark II connected to the Obsbot Tail Air via the 3.5mm jack. So I have a hands-free camera, hands-free microphone,
hands-free connection, all of which are recording straight into my computer. So the moment I hit record, I'm going to have a file that I can play back and listen to. Okay, here we got footage of the Obsbot Tail Air, and here we got footage of the Sony ZV-E10, a mirrorless camera. The Sony is using the Sony 11mm f1.8 lens. That gives it a wide field of view and a bright image. You know what's amazing between these two images? They're using nearly exactly the same settings. Both of them have a shutter speed of 1/60. Both of them have an aperture of f1.8. And the Obsbot has an ISO of 300 and the Sony has an ISO of 320. And just looking at the monitors here, I can tell that the grain performance is very similar. So the Obsbot is actually keeping up. Okay, so I cropped the Sony 11mm in by 40% using the active stabilization. Now you're getting a field of view that's similar to the popular Sigma 16mm YouTube lens. The reason that length is so popular because it's like a 24mm full frame equivalent lens, and the Obsbot is 23mm full frame equivalent. These particular lenses aside, you're practically getting the same distortion, same compression, overall the same look. Of course, you're gonna get more bokeh or background blur with the Sony because of its larger sensor. But the Obsbot is no slouch. If I zoom in, if I get close, yep, you can get some blur in that background, but now my face is so tight in the frame. But what you just saw was a $600 lens. We should compare the Obsbot with the kit lens of the Sony, because this is going to be closer to what you get for your money. Now, the thing with the Sony kit lens is that it has an aperture of f3.5, so it's not very bright. We gotta add some ISO, which will introduce some grain. That should be bright enough. So this is the Sony ZV-E10 kit lens, and this is the Obsbot Tail Air, and this is how they look side by side. Of course, I have set some picture profiles on the Sony, so the colors shouldn't be the basis here. We are using this zoom lens at its widest focal length, which is 16mm, which is now exactly the same focal length as the Sigma 16mm. You are getting practically the same look. Let me have them switch places a bit. And again, this is how they compare. Okay, let's wrap this up. Overall, the Obsbot Tail Air is jam-packed with a lot of features, no doubt about that. I saw it as a webcam, but it's being marketed as this all-around creation tool. But if you ask me, the bells and whistles don't matter if the image quality is bad. That's what it all boils down to. And for image quality, I can say I'm impressed for the sensor size. The Tail Air has a 1/1.8 inch sized sensor, which is about the same sensor size as this iPhone 12 Pro Max's main camera. And I was able to use this camera as my upgraded webcam for years. Even recorded an online course with this. But even though the sensor size is roughly equal, there's something about the Tail Air image quality. I think it's the neutral look. I mean, the colors are great compared to phone footage. Doesn't look overly sharpened, looks very natural. And again, that f1.8 aperture is really maximizing its quality. Now, I found the dynamic range to be right at the Goldilocks zone. See right here, if I raise the ISO, I really lose the detail in the highlights. A lot of information is lost. But again, you can't expect this to perform like a mirrorless camera. For the sensor size, I think it's good enough. And have I talked about the sharpness yet? Look at how sharp that is. All those details on my face. And again, right now, look at that background blur when I'm up close. The lens is sharp and wide. You got 4K resolution. I don't think the image quality is lacking. I don't think it's incredible. I think it's just right for the price. It's just good enough that one of my colleagues from one of my previous meetings was shocked that after a 2-hour meeting, I revealed that I was using a webcam. And he was like, wait, that's a webcam? Wait, nah, No, that's a webcam? And this guy is a professional streamer. I even use it for a podcast. And if I didn't have my Sonys, I would gladly use this for YouTube videos. If you have the right lighting, you can get an incredible image out of this. And for me, the quality is good enough that I can see myself using this as my webcam for the next 2-3 years. Did it stop tracking me? I am still waiting for a 1-inch sensor webcam. But for now, I'm really digging this Obsbot. Would I choose it over a mirrorless camera if I were to start over? Maybe. Because the great thing about the Obsbot, as you can see right now, is that it really simplifies the workflow. You're practically editing on the go. And with NDI, you don't even need to take the SD card out. So maybe if my budget were very limited and the added cost to buying a mirrorless camera meant a lot, then I think the Obsbot Tail Air is worth considering. By the way, if you like this video, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to this channel. And by the way, although this video is not sponsored, I'm not getting paid to say anything. This video was made possible because of this channel's members. And I'd like to thank these phenomenal human beings over here. Thank you. And if you like this video, check out this one.